Well, welcome. I am so glad you came. I want to introduce myself. My name is Eleanor Parker. I was asked by Carol, the Historical Society, if I would come and speak a little bit about my life. Honestly, when she asked me, I thought, I'm not really sure what I have to say that would be of any interest to the people, but I will just give it a go and try. I do have a couple of claims to fame, which I will share with you a little bit later. But primarily, I am a teacher and a volunteer and help out in the schools and in the community and with my church. And that's really where my heart is and my love is. I guess the best place to start is at the beginning and give you a little bit of history. My great-grandfather was one of the founding men of Woodstock, Reuben Parker. And we owned the property from Parker's Ledge all the way over to where Clark's Trading Post is right now. We were into farming, and my grandfather fought in the Civil War. He met with a number of calamities over his time in serving, one of which was he was shipwrecked, among other things. And all of these calamities caused him to have some failing health. When my father was at UNH going to school, he was called home to take care of the family farm and to be available to his parents during that time. And so he came home. My parents, as the story goes, met on a train as they were going to and from college and locations. And so my parents were married, and I came along quite some time after. I was an only child, and they were older than most when I was born. I really, from a very, very young age, knew that I wanted to be a teacher. I would look at magazines and books, and I would cut out things of all the things that I wanted to do and teach my children when I got older. It was just a passion, and we had teachers in my family, and so it was just something that I always sort of grew up, here's all my papers, grew up knowing that I would do that. So I went to school at Woodstock, the Woodstock High School. When I was growing up, my father did many different jobs. He was the town plow guy. He worked at the schools to do the janitorial things. Another thing that our family did was take care of the cottages in Woodstock that professors would come and spend time at during the summer. People would come from the big cities, professors and scholars from the bigger colleges, to soak in some of the New Hampshire mountain fresh air and be on sabbatical or relax and regroup before their fall semester would start again. And so we would often have these professors in our home, and I would just sit and listen and soak into all their exciting stories of the academic world. And it just drew me more so into knowing that that's what I wanted to do with my life, is to be able to teach the children. I graduated from the Woodstock High School in 1937, and I was one of 6 to graduate. I was the only one to go on to college. I went to Mount Holyoke, where I got my bachelor's in arts, and then went on to teach. My first teaching job was 1941 in Madison, New Hampshire. I taught 7th through 12th grade. I taught just about every subject, French and history and English. I was there for about 3 years until I was called to come back to Lincoln to teach at the Lincoln High School. I was there for about 3 years. And during this time was also World War II was happening. World War II touched a lot of communities, even our community. Part of what I was involved in the school system during that time is giving out the ration cards, which were given out through the school system, and also the victory gardens. And we were trying to conserve food and to send our canned goods to the troops to be able to support them. It drew our community together, and it was a time of a community effort to help our troops. After I served teaching for 3 years in Lincoln, I was given a position in New London, so I moved out of the area. I also did a short sabbatical in France about that time at the end of World War II. I loved France and would have loved to have stayed there longer, but my mother's ailing health drew me back to the mountains to help take care of her. I was the only child, and therefore I was the the one expected, and I wanted to come back and help her. So I came back to the area. After leaving New London High School, I got a position at Laconia, and that's where I mostly taught. I was there for 26 years at the Laconia High School, and where my first claim to fame came about. After I'd been teaching there about 10 years, it was 1964, the year before the Civil Rights Act had become law, that racial discrimination was no longer allowed to happen. And so the country it was a hot topic, and it was still very sensitive the following September. And I decided that I wanted to teach from this book. I'm not sure if any of you have read this, but To Kill a Mockingbird. And I went before my students, they were high school seniors, and I said that everybody has a right to express their opinion. And they could read this book, or they could choose not to read it. They could choose to return it unread. That was their choice. And unanimously, all my students said that they wanted to pursue reading this book. Unfortunately, some of the parents did not feel the same way and went to the school board. So I found myself standing before the school board to defend my choice to teach this material in the class. And as I went before them, I said that I really believed that if I and my class were not able to discuss this book, and ultimately other students and other teachers able to discuss this book, that I would need to step down and give them my resignation. I shared with them that my hope in going over this book with my students was that we would become more like Atticus Finch, that we would be more loving and compassionate and goodness versus the hatred and intolerance and prejudice that was expressed in this book. And I wanted to be able to share that with my students. I wasn't really sure how it would go with the school board, but they came back and unanimously allowed me to continue to teach this school and to teach this particular book, which I did. The following year, I was nominated for New Hampshire Teacher of the Year, which I won, and I think probably largely in part to that little testimony in front of the school board. The following year, I was nominated for National Teacher of the Year, and I placed 5th for that. So it was nice to be recognized, but the most important thing for me was really my students and their families. I never married, and I didn't have any children of my own, so I put in a lot of effort to them and with them. In 1980, I went into an early retirement. I got the news that my health was failing and that I should probably put things in order. And so I decided to come back to Woodstock, where I grew up and where I love to be. And I came back, and after a number of months of sort of sitting around waiting for my health to decline, that did not happen. And I decided that I needed to start living instead of waiting for death. I would just get involved in things, and I knew I was going to miss the children and miss being a part of their lives. So I started volunteering at the Linwood School. I played organ and piano. I did accompaniment for about 8 years with the children. I also was the secretary for the Pemi Historical Society. But my greatest love truly was the Pemi Valley Baptist Church, where I played organ and piano for many, many years and served there faithfully. One of the joys that I had was to be able to play the piano, and a friend of mine played the organ every year for a concert that we would give to the community and to our friends. And it was such a special time. I loved music just about as much as I loved my children and my teaching, and so that was quite a joy. In 1989, I was nominated for New Hampshire Woman of the Year. Actually, the funny story is in 1988, I was nominated for New Hampshire Woman of the Year. But because I was so busy serving and volunteering, I did not answer the phone to accept the nomination, and so it went to somebody else. In 1989, apparently I slowed down long enough for somebody to catch me on the telephone, and I did win New Hampshire Woman of the Year. I really didn't feel like I deserved that. I was in company with Rachel Adams, and I thought that probably I was not in the circle that I should have been in, but I gladly went to my acceptance speech and took that honor and was pleased that people had recognized that. In 1990, my health declined again. I had been given 15 years of grace in which I could come and serve this community. But in 1990, that my health was declining again. And I chose to go down to Concord to Heritage Heights to spend my last few years where I could be taken care of. I continue to serve that community as well, as long as that I could. And that is my life story. I'm glad that you came to listen. I hope that it was of some point of interest and that you learned something new today. And I thank you for coming.